Good morning and welcome to another episode of Morning Java, brought to you as always by our friends at the Get-Go Cafe and Market, where they have burgers and not convenience store burgers.
No, honestly, I tried one of their veggie burgers. They're really good, and I'm qualified to say that because I was a vegetarian for like 8-9 years. But, I'd get a veggie burger again from there.
Past tense vegetarian in our presence here. In addition to that, sporting the serious world champs sweater, the Finnish program. Before we get to the Penguins who participated in the World Championships, the Finnish program now, Taylor, we're talking about juniors. We're talking about, let's not forget, the Olympics. At every level now, including
the women won silver at the World Championship.
The women's program. It's no longer just about Nora, the goaltender. It's now about their whole program. What is happening in Finland? Because now we're also talking about the NHL draft, potentially, probably not Kapokaka, but having a number one or a 1A guy in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, what the Finnish team did in this past World Championship is really impressive, just because they had only 2 guys who played in the NHL this past season, and they weren't even there full time; they were part time.
Yeah,
and they won gold against Canada, who all.
Look who they beat!
All NHL,
They're right down the road of Sweden, Canada, and Russia.
They knocked out Russia.
Yeah.
I mean, guys, they have a lot of NHLers, a lot of KHL guys, and Kapokaka kind of was the star of the tournament for them. It's like every goal he scored was a highlight reel goal.
Well, he had a little extra motivation too, because I think he wants to be the number one overall pick ahead of Jack Hughes.
And he could be.
He could be, except look who's doing the picking. It's Ray Shero. Ray Shero would take an American. Not that Jack Hughes is a stiff. He would take an American stiff over a European player. Ray will deny that, by the way, emphatically, but Ray is very much into his American players.
What he brings, Kakko, coming from the Finnish league, he's been playing against grown men.
Yes.
And, Hughes is coming from the U.S. development program. It is hard to compare them, but, they're both great players.
So there were some Penguins who participated in this tournament as well. And, hey, look, it's a boat. This is a pretty good place to work.
Yeah. There are a couple Penguins that participated in the tournament. A lot of guys were standouts. Teddy Bluger and his Latvian team were the only ones that didn't make it out of preliminary play of the Penguins in the tournament.
That probably wasn't Teddy's fault.
It wasn't Teddy's fault, but he was one of their top guys on the team.
He should be
one of the only NHLers. I don't know what the final numbers were, but he was leading the tournament in face-off percentage.
Oh, that's nice
for
too.
A good part of the tournament.
For a guy that Mike Sullivan was bouncing from center to left wing at times in favor of Matt Cullen. Matt Cullen's probably not going to be back. That's a good thing.
And another guy that played center in the tournament, Dominic Simone, he was first-line center for the Czech Republic, and he did well. He was the leading scorer among all Penguins in the tournament.
Yeah, but he stinks, right?
He's not even recording us anymore. But, over a point per game in the tournament. I think his final numbers were,
Hey, 12, we're over here.
12 points in 10 games. He was doing well. He was playing with Voracek and Gudis, and he fit in. So do you think maybe...
Wait a second. Gudis was up front?
Yeah. They changed lines throughout the tournament, but Simone was on
crazy.
the top line.
I didn't know that.
So... Well, see, they weren't a very deep team either.
Oh.
And they still finished 4th in the tournament. But, so is Simone's game maybe better suited for center? He doesn't have the finish maybe needed for a winger, but he's strong enough defensively.
I could see that. I could see him certainly being depth in that regard.
Yeah.
What about the one center everybody was really hoping most would go berserk over there?
Malkin?
Yeah, and really didn't. He had all his points against Norway or something.
He really didn't. He had 1 goal and I think 4 assists the entire tournament. But then again, the Russian team was so deep that they didn't really need their stars to go off like that. Like Ovechkin didn't score until the final preliminary game either.
But they didn't win.
They didn't win. No, they won bronze. They played in the bronze medal game because of a 1-0 loss to Finland.
Yeah, I was gonna say
scoring then, but in the rest, in the preliminary play, the bulk of the tournament, they didn't need those guys.
If you go into that tournament with Malkin and Ovechkin, and I think Kucherov went over too. Yeah, I'm sorry, you didn't win anything.
Yeah.
You lost.
Yeah, I know. The team, they're very disappointed.
I'm
in
sure.
their finish.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Only the Finnish weren't disappointed in their finish. Okay, when I get really savvy at this, I'm going to start changing my shirt as well between segments. She, of course, is now representing Team Deutschland. Mm-hmm. That's Germany for the uninitiated. Let's talk about cocaine, because why not?
Yeah. I mean, it's in the news with...
So I've heard.
The video coming out of Evgeny Kuznetsov, he says it was from last summer in Vegas. He's not actually doing cocaine in the video, but he's in that. And
we also don't know 1,000% sure that, but he also didn't deny that it was cocaine in his denial.
Yeah, I mean it's probably cocaine, but it's really big news. But I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's not very newsworthy. A lot of people in the NHL do drugs.
Yeah, I mean it's not just first liners or second liners. Sorry, I'm on a roll today. It's prevalent, and I'm sure you've heard that in your dealings with people, even in the whether it's minor leagues or prospects or whatever. Drugs happen.
A minor league guy once told me half of his junior team was on cocaine.
Wow.
So, I mean that
actually is surprising. I'm sorry, that's surprising.
Weed is pretty prevalent too, and now the NHL
in all sports.
Well, and it's probably more so in the NHL because they don't do anything about it. I mean, they test for it, but they can't suspend you for failing a drug test. If you test positive for something, they give you like kind of a note and telling you about their substance abuse program. But
they basically do this.
Yeah, they can't force someone into it. Bill Daley once said that like if there are alarming rates of like cocaine in your system, then they like just reach out to you personally and say, hey. They even then they can't force someone into
on the cocaine K. Yeah. I mean that's about it. The NHL, as it deals with, and I'm talking only about the highest level of hockey now, as it deals with issues such as CTE, concussions, mental health. There's no way, Taylor, that these issues should be set over here while you say, do whatever drugs you want. And I know it's not that simple. I'm not purposely simplifying it, but
you can't look at it in a vacuum. And I mean, some of these guys that are just partying, doing drugs like that, but a lot of them, it is a coping mechanism for those.
Or pain.
Yes.
Which is, again, something that we hear about much more commonly as it relates to football players, because it's just discussed more often. They'll just say, "Look, we're after every Sunday game, we're bruising." Well, hockey players are too.
Yeah.
And they play a lot more games.
Yeah, and I see the NHL isn't even taking the CTE concussion thing seriously.
No, they are not.
We can't expect them really to take.
Hell, they're not even acknowledging, Taylor. They don't even acknowledge that it exists.
No.
I mean, Gary Bettman is still being deposed in public judicial settings as saying that we have yet to see concrete evidence that whatever. Go talk to your players or your former
all the former players.
That's the ones who really to talk to.
Yeah, and I mean, of all those off the ice things happening in the NHL, you got like abusers and like rapists in the league, and they don't even really address that. I think a guy doing coke in Vegas.
I let them off the hook for Voinov. I think they handled Voinov pretty well. They weren't the ones that reinstated him. The arbitrator did.
Yeah, there's a lot more than Voinov though.
But there's a lot more than Voinov, and they're difficult to prove and everything else. We're kind of straying from the original.
Yeah.
Which is Kuznetsov. Nothing's going to come of this, is it?
Probably not. I mean.
What would they do?
What would they do? He didn't get arrested. If someone gets arrested and charged, they can force someone into the substance program. But I mean, he wasn't even doing drugs in the video. He said something like, "I'll submit to a medical examination," but like,
he will. It was a year ago, but
yeah, out of your system in like 2 days, I think. So I mean, let him go through with the exam.
Exactly.